Good evening, and thank you everyone for joining our Charge Up Fairfax Virtual Roundtable this evening. My name is Kate Daly, Environmental Analyst with Fairfax County's Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination, or the OEEC. I'll be moderating tonight's webinar where we'll be speaking with members of our Charge Up Fairfax pilot program communities. Each of these panelists is from a community that was selected into our Charge Up Fairfax pilot program. They received a site visit and feasibility study and have installed or are working towards installing EV chargers in their community. We'll be talking with these panelists about their experience with the Charge Up Fairfax program, how they overcame any barriers, and how they benefited from the technical assistance and financial support provided. A few housekeeping items to note: this webinar is being live streamed and recorded. It will be available on the Charge Up Fairfax website and Fairfax County YouTube account following the conclusion of the webinar. We'll also email the link to all participants who registered for the program. The webinar will conclude at 7:30 p.m. Attendee microphones and cameras will be off for this session, but you should be able to see and hear the presenters. If you have any questions for the presenters or panel members, please ask them in the chat. We'll try to answer what we can. And if you have any questions that we're not able to answer tonight, you can reach out to Julie Gurney, the Charge Up Fairfax Program Coordinator, after the webinar. She can be reached with any Charge Up Fairfax questions at OEEC Electric Vehicles at fairfaxcounty.gov. Before we begin, I would like to thank my colleagues in OEEC, Emily Bohr and John Silcox, who made tonight's webinar possible. And now I'd like to introduce Julie Gurney, who will be leading tonight's panel. Julie is a mitigation specialist with OEEC. She has been working on the Charge Up Fairfax program since May and is currently leading the program. Julie, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to our panel members for being here tonight. The first thing I'm going to do is introduce you to our panel members, and these are all members of our Charge Up Fairfax pilot program. So first we have Stuart Moriarty, and Stuart is the Resident Services Coordinator of Condo Management, which is the company that manages Penderbrook Community Association. We have Paula Hancock, and she's on the EV Charging Committee of the Inlet Cluster Association. And we have Stan Baderman, who is the President of the Board of Directors of the Harper Square Cluster Association. We may have one other panelist joining us tonight. He had a prior commitment, but will join in later if he's able to, and that is Michael Kramer, who's the board president at Nantucket at Reston. So to give a quick review of Charge Up Fairfax, Charge Up Fairfax is a program that supports community associations in the installation of electric vehicle charging stations by providing both technical assistance and financial support. Communities that are accepted into the program receive a site visit and assessment from an engineering firm paid for by Fairfax County and can receive financial support for the installation of their charging stations. Up to 8 community associations will be accepted into the program during this current application period, which is currently open and will close on November 8th. You can visit the Charge Up Fairfax website for more information. So now I would like to turn it over to our panelists for an introduction to their community. So panelists, please tell us about your role in the community and the makeup of your community, including how many units you have, what type of houses are in your community, and tell us where you are in the process of charger installation. So why don't we start with Paula? We can start with you. Oh, Paula, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm with Inlet Cluster Association. I'm on the EV committee, which is which I guess we've had for a couple of years now. We're in the Lake Ann area of Reston, so a 50-year-old townhouse community with no electricity anywhere near where the cars park. We have carports and surface parking. So it was our challenge was to find electricity, a spot where we could do this. I'm sorry, Julie, what else did you want me? What else was included?
And tell us, so you have, how many townhouses do you have?
Oh yeah, we have 63.
Okay, and all townhouses, right.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Stuart, do you want to go next?
Sure. I represent Penderbrook Community Association. I'm the Resident Services Coordinator. Um, we are a community of 7 land bays. We're made up of condos, townhomes, and single-family homes. Um, and we have 1,776 homes total in the community. And we do have the benefit of having our clubhouse and golf course parking lot as to where to install our charging stations. But our initial reasoning for getting into looking into the charging stations was we realized that people in the single family and townhomes with garages had the option to install this infrastructure for themselves, but we obviously wanted to have that option for residents that did not have that option. So for our condos and non garage townhomes. But it's actually turned into something that we think, every resident with an electric vehicle can benefit from.
Thank you. And go ahead, Stan.
Hi, everyone. Stan Baderman. I am the president of Harper Square Cluster Association in Reston. We are a community of 50 townhomes, and we're also about 40 or 50 years old. So there was also this issue of, wiring and getting electricity to our parking lot, which does not have any assigned parking. So that was it was a hurdle that we had to overcome. And we are currently, I would say, in the middle, in the process of getting the chargers actually installed. I would say it's halfway done. There's some hiccups that we hit along the way that we're working through, but we are well on our way to actually having two chargers available for our residents and their guests to use.
All right, thank you. And so what I'm going to do now is ask some questions to the panelists. And I will I'll call on the panelists to talk about their experiences. And of course, if any of the panelists have anything to add, please feel free to jump in. So one of the important things when you're starting the process of applying is outreach to your community and to your residents. So why don't we start by talking about some different outreach that you did to your residents. So Paula, do you want to tell us about what you did?
Yes. Well, before we started, we sent a survey to the community, but we sent a very simple survey. I think it was a 3-question survey, just to see if people had any interest in pursuing this at all before we went down that road and started doing any work. And we had very positive response. Out of 63 households, 40 responded. So we thought that was kind of amazing. And the majority of those who responded were interested. That didn't mean they wanted to do it, but they were interested in, seeing if it was possible to do it and what it would cost to do it. So, so there was that. Then we just sort of jumped in, and we didn't really do much more outreach until we had some proposals. And I think at that point, we probably should have conducted another survey to see how, well, I'll take it back. I think at that point, our outreach should have been focused more on the board. So that was one lesson learned. And I think the other outreach that's really important is more communication rather than less communication as you're figuring things out along the way. I'll leave it at that unless there are follow-up, unless there are probing questions to any of that.
Okay. And Stuart, did you do anything different or additional?
We sent out so we have a weekly newsletter that we send out to the community, and we created a survey through Google. And we actually had a very good response. I think well over 200 residents responded. It was about half and half. Obviously, the biggest concerns were cost and people that don't own electric vehicles, feeling that they're, fronting the cost for this. But I think it was good to just kind of get that feedback up front, and also to let them know that, programs like this are going to help, cut into those costs. So.
Thank you. And Stan, do you want to add anything?
I mean, our process, we were fortunate that, our board was pretty much, we all on the same page when it came to this topic. We read some statistic that said that, by 2030, something like 50% of car sales in the US will be EVs. So what we did was we used the questionnaire that was provided by Charge Up, and we converted that into an online survey that we sent to all of our residents. We modified it slightly. We added some granularity around, the time frame that residents were thinking of switching to EVs, and modified it in a couple of other areas. But we had a very positive response. I think, something like 56% of respondents were planning to purchase an EV in the next 5 years. So we felt that as a board, we had a duty to act. The board's job, in our view, is obviously to take care of the day-to-day, but also think more strategically into the future. And we felt it was our responsibility to anticipate this need, this communal need, to have charging infrastructure in our cluster. And so, it was pretty kind of easy decision from that point to go forward with this.
Great, thank you. And then, so talking about, this application, so the survey was part of the application. How was the process? And is there any advice, if we have people on this roundtable, people who are attending who want some advice on starting this process to apply, what advice would you give them? And is there anything you wish you understood when you first applied to the program? Stuart, do you want to talk about some of the advice you have?
To be honest with you, I think that the people behind the program were, the most helpful. We kind of just jumped into this, like I've heard Paula say, they kind of just jumped into it. Obviously, I'm no engineer or expert, so it was nice to have people from different, backgrounds with the county, with Dominion, and their engineers that they brought in, the people that know what they're doing. They were able to actually, help us through the process. So I think that having those different groups of people there to guide you along really helped.
Okay. Stan or Paula, do you have any advice for communities thinking about applying, about the application, or things you think they should do?
Just one thing I want to say is that everything takes a lot longer than you may anticipate. I'm talking about, the installation part, not so much getting into this program, but everything after that. Everything will take much longer than you anticipate. So just kind of keep that in mind. But as far as the process, everything was pretty straightforward. We filled out the application. We reviewed it at our board meeting, voted on it, and sent it in. And we're fortunate enough to make it into that pilot. So we were very happy about that.
Great.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific to add. I would say filling out the application and working with your office has been the easiest part of this project. So
yeah,
it was very straightforward.
Good. All right, thank you. And then, so after a community is accepted into the program, the next thing that happens is staff from our office, as well as staff engineers from our contracted engineers, come out to your site and do a site visit. So tell us a little bit about that. What did you learn from that site visit, and then the feasibility memo that we provided to you? Do you want to start on this one, Stan?
Sure. So before entering this program, we actually had a couple of electricians or contractors come out to give us estimates on our own. So, having the feasibility done kind of confirmed for us what the cost that we're looking at. And I will say, just frankly, it was higher than we were initially thinking. Because again, we're dealing here with, it's kind of like the commercial side. If you were to get this wired for your house as a resident, there's a different set of costs, much lower, I will say. But because you're dealing with, we're HOAs, we're kind of considered quasi-commercial. It's a completely different, I would say, ballpark. So having that feasibility study and memo issued confirmed for us the cost, the actual cost that we would be dealing with.
Stuart or Paula, do you want to add to that?
I think for me, it's that's where a lot of the technical language came in, stuff that I don't really understand. Making sure that you have the capacity, where you're going to draw the electricity from, where the stations are going to go, and then also, once again, how many other departments in each place are involved in doing these things. So, and then also the cost as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess a couple of things. I mean, for us, because we had already figured out, we had already reached out to Dominion on our own, and we had reached out to several contractors on our own. So it was good that the feasibility, but still, this is a homeowner association. None of us are professionals. So I think when we were accepted into the program and you did the feasibility study, it confirmed everything that we had already figured out, which was actually of great value, because then there was some authority behind our recommendation. But one other thing I would say is, as I think it would be useful in the feasibility study to look at more than one location, look at more than one possibility, because we have ended up changing the location because, as it turned out, which we didn't anticipate, we had kind of unsurmountable issues with parking with residents, willingness to trade parking spots in order to make this happen. So it would have been nice to have had that backup option sooner rather than later. And the feasibility study probably could have helped with that, perhaps. Or no, don't let me put it, I'll put it another way. If we should have foreseen that and asked for a review of an alternative option, of an alternative site. That's it.
That's a good thing for some communities to think about. I think this next question, I think this is something a lot of people are thinking about. So tell us about the contractor you chose and the equipment you selected. And with the equipment you selected, what features does it offer? Credit cards, reservations, things like that, if you've gotten that far in the process. And then if you know any of your operation and maintenance costs, I'm sure people are curious about things like that. So Stan, you're kind of the farthest along in this project. So do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we selected, they're called Juice Box Pro 80s, and they are the fastest level 2 chargers currently on the market with 19.2 kilowatt of capacity. So really that's more for future proofing. Right now, there's not really too many vehicles that can even use that level of speed, but a few really high-end EVs. But we were thinking, we're putting these in, let's make sure that, we're ready for whatever comes in the future. And these chargers are networked. So that means they're connected to the internet. have all the features that we needed, like setting, you could set how much you want to charge per kilowatt hour, obviously, who you give access to. Yeah, so our understanding is, that these chargers, I guess as an aside, we're also part of the Dominion program, and these chargers were, two of the chargers that they recommended. So we just decided to go with something that, was vetted already. So we're not going out there and just, there's a lot of vendors out there. We went with something that, should have been vetted already or is vetted already. So that's where we're at.
Great, thank you. And then, Paula, I know you did a lot of research. Do you want to speak to that? Oh, you're on mute.
Keep forgetting to look at that mute button. When we first did the proposal, we looked at working with sort of turnkey installers, and we decided, well, not that we decided, well, we decided that was more expensive than we thought the community was willing to support. So what we've ended up doing is, fortunately, we have another member. We have about 5 people on our EV committee, and we have a homeowner on that committee who was willing to put in the time to, well, I will just say we've taken over sort of the project management of it. So we've stepped away from the turnkey, and I think we're going to be much more involved with, so we've chosen equipment, we've chosen an installer, and I think we're pretty much going to be managing this ourselves in order to really reduce the cost. So the equipment that we're buying is something, well, the network provider and the equipment seller is called OP Connect, and they sell a product that's manufactured by Enphase, which our community member in his research had decided that was a very stable and reliable manufacturer. So so that's who we went with. And hopefully this will happen, and we'll be happy with it.
Hi, Julie. We're getting lots of great questions in the chat, including one particularly timely one. We had someone ask, how long do the panelists anticipate the chargers that they're installing? Do they know the expected lifetime of those chargers?
I can answer that. Almost all of the equipment vendors, I would say we looked at maybe 4 or 5 different equipment vendors, and all of them will offer a warranty for 5 years. And so they last 5 years. And I believe that the Dominion told us that really the expected life is 10 years. And then you'll have electricians tell you that it's actually quite a simple device. It's really the networking part that maybe will, cause hiccups down the line because of cellular connectivity, probably more than anything. So the chargers themselves, I have the impression, are quite durable. I don't know what other people have learned.
Same. We purchased the 5-year extended warranty. The chargers came with a 3-year warranty that was included. We purchased an additional 2 years, so we know at least 5. But just like you're saying, Paula, I mean, we anticipate these should last, I think 10 years. But I think a lot is going to change, as far as chargers and all this technology. It's evolving very quickly. So, I mean, it's possible that we may need to swap them out at some point anyway, even before they reach their end of life or, or fail. So, but at least I'd say 5 to 10 years is probably where we're at as well.
And just a couple more questions from the chat. If you're installing a centrally located charger, how is the usage managed to ensure availability to maximum number of residents? Someone wants to take that question.
Go
Go ahead, Stan. I was going to say that kind of gets into the next discussion we are going to have, which is what regulations and guidelines have you put in place for the chargers? So I think before we get into that, Stuart, do you want to talk quickly about the contractor and the charging stations you chose, and then we can talk about regulations?
Yeah, so we went with ChargePoint, and they offer the technology where you can log in on your app. Obviously, I'm going to be the one that's going to be controlling all the behind the scenes stuff with that, setting the rates and all that. But you do have the ability to do that. I again heard everybody touch briefly on the warranty. We did partake in that as well. And ChargePoint does offer we signed the contract with Blue Whale, and they offer different add-ons. So there's different safety features, so like bolsters and stuff like that. So safety of the actual charging stations. So somebody can't back into them or anything like that. And I'm sorry, what was the original question?
I think you answered it, which was what was the who did you choose for, and then what regulations did you put in place? I think is kind of the next thing we're getting at.
Yeah, and that was a big concern with a lot of our residents as well. But with the technology that is available through ChargePoint, you are able to go in and set time restraints. And if people are leaving their cars there, you can automatically kick in a surcharge. So that's going to bring more money back in for you guys if people are just leaving their cars there. And then again, additional signage saying these spaces are for EV charging only. And then obviously we own the parking lot, so we do have the right to have cars removed if it would ever need to reach that decision. But there are safeguards in place. Usually when you start hitting people in the wallet, that's when they'll start moving. So.
Sorry to interrupt. One more time, question for Stuart. Someone has a question in the chat. How many chargers is your community installing?
We looked at a couple of different options, or 3 actually, and we went with the middle ground, which was 4 dual charging stations, so 8 total. And then with the contract with Dominion, we were able to pay up front for the infrastructure to be put in place so that if we do want to expand in the future, that's already in the ground and we can just go ahead and add from there.
Okay, and so back to Stan and Paula, and I know Paula, you had said you have got some regulations in place. Do you want to add anything to the regulations that you have in place for your chargers?
Do you mean in terms of the policy regarding using the chargers?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think very similar to what Stuart talked about, that all of these network providers provide the option to charge fees if you're plugged in but not charging, to schedule that you can pre-schedule. But we've also written into our policy, because we're just a community of 63 households, that we expect the users to be respectful, and we expect of their time in the space. And we're hoping we can self-regulate, but if we can't, then these other technological means of incentivizing people and controlling people we could use.
Great, thank you. So I hope that answered the question that someone had in the chat. And Stan, do you want to add anything about your regulations or policies?
I mean, I will just say we're currently working on drafting our policy, and we're not anticipating anything lengthy. Like Paula said, I think we're a community of 50 neighbors. We expect everybody to act neighborly, but there will be, we'll have the option to add things like idle fee. So if you leave your car, let's say, what we're thinking about is, if it's plugged in for, and it's done charging and it's been a half hour and you still haven't moved it, then there might be, a couple bucks fee that you would have to pay now. But we're still crossing that bridge, because we're thinking about things like what happens, if this is happening overnight, at like 4 a.m. So we're thinking, possibly at night there won't be any fees, but starting in the morning and during the day there might be some kind of an idle fee. But we haven't really fully crossed that bridge. We're working on the guidelines right now. And our plan is to really first open this up to a small group, like a pilot, just to, resolve any issues we may have. And for us as the board who's managing the back end to kind of get comfortable, with administrating and getting comfortable with the software end of it. So that's kind of our plan right now.
Great. So it sounds like a lot of these charging stations actually are offering you a lot of different options for these regulations. So not only are they written in your guidelines, but the charging station is going to sort of do the enforcing for you, which is a lot easier than you needing to monitor these stations. All right, so we have a lot of great questions. So I'm going to ask in the chat. So I'm going to ask you guys one last question, which was, what was a valuable part for you in participating in Charge Up Fairfax? And then we can try and get to some of these questions in the chat. So Paula, do you want to start?
Sure. The grant itself helped us tremendously in getting people on board with it, because cost has been a big factor for us. I will say, for a small but vocal constituent of our neighborhood, the cost has been a real barrier. So this grant has really helped us overcome that. I know that I've come to you with many questions over the year. I think that we've had this relationship, so it's just nice to have a resource. It's nice to have somebody to call who knows the answer right away or knows where to direct you. So that's been great.
Thank you. Okay, and Stuart?
I would agree with Paula. Having the people there to reach out and rely on for things that you maybe not be most qualified to answer, and have people kind of guide you along in the process is definitely big. Obviously, money is a huge factor. We intend to use our grant to actually cover what our down payment would be with Dominion. So that was pretty much off the table. All of our upfront costs we're going to recoup. So that's a big selling factor. And then also, I think just being able to, be out front of getting this done and helping, the county and all of our associations and communities, get on board and ride into the future.
Thank you. And Stan, do you want to add anything?
I mean, I fully agree with Paula and Stuart. Obviously, the grant money was important in getting the buy-in, but also, having this community of others going through the same issues, being able to, pick up the phone and have a conversation with Paula, for example, of how, how do we handle this issue? How are you handling this issue with the board, et cetera? Really valuable as well. So same answer for me.
Great, thank you.
Julie, I'll just add one other thing. I think that having the grant lends a lot of credibility to the project in community members' minds.
Okay, so we are going to move on to get to some of the questions in the chat. There's been a lot of conversation in there, so Kate's gonna give us some questions, and
Yes.
and any of you panel members can answer if you have good answers or have experienced these.
Yeah, so lots of great questions in the chat. We'll start with this one. Have any of the panelists had to deal with misinformation being brought up by naysayers in the community? And how were you able to deal with that?
Yes, we have experienced that, and the best, so the best way to deal with that is to respond to it, obviously in a factual way, and to try not to get worked up about it. I mean, it's really been, I feel that we're sort of in a combative environment culturally, so I felt like some of that leaked into the neighborhood over this, and so we've really worked hard to just try to present the facts and not get too worked up about it, because the majority of people see reason. We have learned. So you have to know what you're talking about. And one good thing about the naysayers is that they have made us think about things that maybe we haven't thought about before. So sometimes it works to your advantage.
Anyone want to add? Oh, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yes, thank you. And if anyone wants to add, go ahead. And of course, as everyone was saying, once you're in this program, we are here to help with, help with answering questions. If people do have questions, we can answer some of the technical questions and help get the facts out and things like that. So I know I've talked to Paula and helped with people who had some concerns.
I would honestly say, I think just based on the size of the community that I work in, I was honestly anticipating a little bit more pushback from a bigger group of people than we actually got. I just think that, obviously people have their opinions, people have the information that's been brought to them. So again, like Paula said, just make sure that you have your facts there and that you can just present the facts without any emotion or anything like that. Just simply present it. But I also think that it just goes to show that just because we don't see this huge number of electric vehicles being driven around, which I think you see increasingly month by month, I just think it's because simply the infrastructure isn't there for people to have this as an option for them, as an actual viable option. So again, I totally agree with Paula, and I would just say always go in expecting more just so that you're prepared.
I mean, I will say in my community, we did not have a lot of opposition. I was fortunate. We were fortunate in that. Everybody seemed to be on the same page. So, for me, fortunately, that was not much of an issue.
That's great. I have one other thing to add. Sometimes people are very against it because they don't know how EV charging works. So for example, if you don't I mean, I didn't really think about EV charging until I got an EV, and then, you know, you learn a lot about it. So, for example, some of the naysayers would say things like, oh, our neighborhood is going to get flooded with people coming in trying to use our chargers, and those chargers are going to be listed on networks. And this is going to cause lots of problems with all these people coming into our neighborhood. So, you know, we had to educate them that no, that you can control that very easily, and that no, our chargers won't be listed on a public map, that they are private for our community. So, you know, I can think of other examples, but you get the idea. There are sort of misunderstandings about how it would work, so that taking the time to educate people and to think about you know, that they don't know that it's not second nature to them like it might be to you if you've been charging a car for a couple of years.
And I will add that Fairfax County zoning regulates that the chargers are for residents and their guests only. They cannot be public chargers. So if you have people in the community concerned about others coming in, it's actually something that is not allowed by zoning regulations. All right. Sorry, Kate, do we have any more questions?
Yes, great information. Thank you all. So we had one, this is probably particularly relevant to some of our larger communities. How did you deal with the installation of chargers that are potentially located further away from some of the HOA member homes? Will residents still use the chargers if they're located further away from their homes?
It was something that was brought up, but I think it really just boiled down to, well, we either have the infrastructure or we don't. So, you know, where we have our lot is where we have it. And fortunately for some people, they're closer than others. But, you know, I think we have a pretty active community, and they don't mind, you know, walking down the street to go charge their car as opposed to having to drive down to Fairfax Town Center or, you know, some other close commercial place to charge their car. It's a convenience thing. So if it's going to be more convenient for them, then they're going to use it.
And I will jump in and say, I think a lot of times the assumption is that everyone is coming in and charging their cars every night. And the reality is most people are charging their cars once or twice a week. So park your car, it might be a little further away from your home, park it for a couple of hours, and then it's charged, and then you don't have to charge it again. Like going to the gas station, you go once or twice a week, depending on how much you drive. You're going to charge a couple times a week, depending on how much you drive. So yes, it's not as convenient as being at home and plugging it in as soon as you get home, but generally it's closer than, you know, as someone said, driving, you know, to the grocery store around the corner or the community center that has the charging stations.
And could each of our panelists please share the grant amount your association was awarded and the range of the total cost to install? A per charger estimate of cost would be great.
Well, we're probably the luckiest ones here. We got $10,000 from the county. We're looking at a total install of, I think, about $12,000.
I will jump in and just to give the overall grant amounts. The financial assistance for most communities is $5,000 for up to 1/3 of the cost of the EV charger purchase, installation, and contractor costs. So everything that's included in getting that installed. Equity designated communities are eligible for up to $10,000. And we have also added a grant only option for this next round, where if you've already got electricians called, you've looked into contractors, you can get up to $7,000 in grant funds. You won't get the feasibility study, and the equity designated areas are eligible for up to $12,000 in grant funds. And you get these after the installation is complete. So it depends on. There's a lot of things that go into how much the installation is going to cost. It has to do with how much digging is going to have to happen to get the electricity from your transformer to where your charging stations are. There is are you going to have to disrupt any sidewalks? Are you going to have to go under any roads? Are you going to have to increase the capacity of your transformer, which actually is usually covered by Dominion? But there's a lot of different things to go into how much it's going to cost on top of how many chargers you get. So I don't know, Stan or Stuart, if you want to jump in and talk about your cost. I know both of you, Stan, yours was a little different. You had a bigger project along with it. But if either you want to talk about that a little more, you can.
Yeah, sure. So we were awarded the $5 grand, 5K, up to 30%. And so we also partnered with Dominion for their make ready. So they're taking care of all of our wiring on the back end, right up to where the chargers are going. And then we're paying for the rest, the actual chargers. We purchased those on our own, 2 chargers, and as well as having them installed. And that is costing us, I believe, between 10 and 12,000 for those 2. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know how much more detail you want me to go on the Dominion, but maybe Stuart has some more to add there.
So ours is a bit more pricier than that. We are anticipating the 5,000 from Charge Up. And as mentioned, that if not fully, pretty much covers the upfront costs with the contract that we have with Dominion. Dominion will be adding an outside transformer for us, so I'm sure that drew into the cost as well. But again, that will allow us to expand in the future. And then there's also a little bit of digging that needs to be done from our power source at our clubhouse and fitness center deep into the parking lot to where we are going to be putting the stations. But with all of that and install and infrastructure, we would be looking at $88,000.
That's for how many chargers?
That's for 4 dual charging stations.
And Julie, this is probably a question for you. Can you please outline specifically what is included in the feasibility study?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the feasibility study, our office, members of our offices, usually myself and then someone from Land Development Services, along with engineers from a contracted engineering company, come out to the site. So we come out to the site. When you fill out the application, you give us one location and one backup location that you're interested in having the chargers. So we take a look at the location. We look at how far you are from transformers, how many parking spaces this is going to take up. And then our engineers go back, they go to Dominion, and they look at where the power sources are, where the lines are, and that helps to see if there might be different options for charging stations. So when you get your feasibility study, it's going to show you where the lines are, where the Dominion power lines are, how much capacity your transformers can hold, whether you need to upgrade those transformers, what kind of digging you're going to need to do. And then there will be an estimated cost. Again, it is an estimate. We're not actually digging in the ground and seeing 100% what's under there. We take a look at what we can find, but you will get an estimate cost on there as well. And it does look like we got Michael joined us, who is from our other community. So are you able to turn on your mic and introduce yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your community and where you are in the process and what your community makeup is.
Sure. I'm Mike Kramer. I'm at Nantucket at Reston. We're 56 condominiums cluster of 4 buildings in south of Reston. South Reston, not far from the Reston High School and the shopping center with the Safeway. And we applied for the grant with the first process back in, I guess it was March or February of 2023. Is that correct, Julie?
Yes, that's correct.
And we, in fact, had a pretty large meeting here with Julie's predecessor and people from the county, other people from the county, as well as from Reston Association. It was quite a nice meeting we had when we first were approved for the grant. But it's been a very interesting experience, especially working with the kind people like Julie and other people from the county. I really appreciate their helpfulness, and the engineers in the county were quite helpful. And we've also lately have evolved to working quite closely with Dominion on a new program, which if there were other members of my board, which we have only 3, but we do have some pushback, which I'd be happy to talk about if other people want to know later in this conversation. But thank you for helping us, and I look forward to helping anybody else who might want to get some feedback on this progress and process.
Do you have any advice you would share for people who are thinking about applying for the program?
Well, the biggest issue I have, I think, is we had to work through a time when there's been a lot of pushback in terms of electric cars, and you have to be open and honest about that. There's been a lot of articles and newspapers and journals that companies like Ford are deciding not to go so quickly on the electric car path, and that pushback is resonating with some of the members of our board. So we were going to go right ahead with it and voted for it. Then a member of our board about 5 months ago, we only have 3 members, so she has, quite a bit of influence. And she said, well, we really need to have buy-in from all the homeowners because we're not used to doing something that's not in our reserves. So that's been an uphill climb. So that's been our biggest impasse. If that didn't happen, we'd probably have our 2 charging stations installed by now. So.
Yep. All right, thank you. So we're in the question and answer session. So Kate is asking questions, and any of you can again jump in if you've got an answer.
Okay, we had a great question asking if the attendees might be able to get in touch with some of the community associations and the panel to learn more about their struggles and successes.
So I think the best thing would be to reach out to me, and I think my email is in the chat, oeecelectricvehicles@fairfaxcounty.gov. If you get in touch with me, I could reach out to the panelists for you. They are a mostly volunteer group, so I don't want to be handing out their personal emails, but I'm happy to take any questions and forward it on to them and get in touch that way.
A few more questions. Are communities using the charging stations as an amenity or looking more towards revenue?
For us, it's an amenity. We're intending it to be an amenity.
Same.
I think the most important quality of it is as an amenity, because it's hard to get buy-in for any other reason. I don't think you're going to make enough money at this time until a high percentage of people buy into the electric vehicle transition to expect that you're going to get a return on your investment at all. So I think an amenity is a much more quality response at this time.
Our obviously, our first choice would be as an amenity, but we have actually run numbers with ChargePoint that show us show how long it would take for us to make a return on our investment.
How many units are in your community, Stan? I forgot.
I mean, Stan or Stewart?
Who I don't know. Who just spoke? I don't know.
That was Stewart.
Stewart.
That was me.
Oh,
We have
okay.
1,776 homes.
Yeah, that's so do you have a tally of how many electric cars you already have in your community?
Based off the survey that we had, about I believe 38 to 40% of those that responded already had electric vehicles, and another 20% were either considering or had held off on making a purchase because the infrastructure was not there. So, point number.
I could see how you can have a pretty early return then on that size of community with that much, ownership of electric vehicles.
And there's also, we also, surprisingly to me, we had quite a few people respond that had no intention of getting electric vehicles and did not have them, but actually wanted it for when their guests come that do have electric vehicles. So that was an interesting learning point too.
Well, that was a great segue to our next question. What is the recommended number of charging stations for, say, 100 households?
I will say that is a very good question, and I think it's a challenging question to answer. One of the nice things about with the feasibility study, and I think Stuart had talked about this, I think it was Stuart talked about this, is one of the more expensive parts of getting this done is getting the wiring to the charging station. So a lot of communities are opting to wire for, say, 1, 2, 3 charging stations, with the opportunity to extend more in the future, so that you can put in 3 now, but now you've got the infrastructure that when you want 3 more, they go up much quicker and much more easily, and of course much cheaper. It's cheaper to do all of the prep work early on. So you guys can maybe have each of you tell us how many chargers you have chosen to put in. Also, as charging gets faster, I think it's a tough question to answer, but why don't each of you tell us how many chargers you've chosen for your community? And then we are running short on time, so why don't we just go to that, and that's probably going to be the final question we'll be able to answer tonight.
Sure, I'll go. So we're getting 2, like I mentioned, 2 high-speed level 2 chargers just to start with, but we, as Julie mentioned, we kind of are getting ready in the event that we want more. The infrastructure will already be in place, so we can easily add, I think, up to maybe 4 additional ones using the same panel and meter that's being installed right now for these 2.
Yeah, we're also doing 2 with capacity to 2 with the possibility to extend to 4 based on the location that we've chosen.
Same thing in our community. Our original proposal and our present proposal that we're working with Dominion on is for 2, but we chose a section of our parking lot that's not right in front of our units. It's near our wooded area where there's room to grow to 6 or 8 in the future. But right now, if our condo board approves it, we're going to go ahead with just 2 with 56, as I said, units in our community.
And Stan and Paula, you have a right under 100 in yours, correct?
We have 50.
Okay.
Right, we have 63.
Okay.
And our community also, we have we have carports, and some people are able to make the run with a conduit from their house to their carport, you know, depending on how their house is situated in relation to the carport. So there are some people who will be able to install, and who have installed private charging in their carport, which was another reason why we originally were going to start with 4 and we decided to back off to 2.
Okay, well, we are at time, so we thank you everyone for attending, and thank you so much again to our panel members for sharing your successes and lessons learned tonight. Remember that this was recorded, so you'll be able to watch the webinar on the Charge Up Fairfax website. If any of you had any questions that weren't answered, there's lots of great questions tonight. Please check the website or reach out to Julie Gurney at OEEC Electric Vehicles at fairfaxcounty.gov. We also have included her email in the chat. The fall 2024 application period is now open through close of business on Friday, November 8th. Instructions on how to apply are on the OEEC website. Before we conclude, I would like to share information about another program that our office offers, the Energy Conservation Assistance Program. The application period is currently open for this program, and it provides technical assistance and matching reimbursement grants for energy efficiency, renewable energy, and resilience projects to qualifying organizations, including community associations. With this program, the county provides a 50% reimbursement or up to $15,000 a year for energy updates. Please see the Energy Conservation Assistance Program webpage for more information or contact oeecinfo@fairfaxcounty.gov. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. Did a great job.